Thanks for tuning in. This is Sick Talks number 105 with Francis Zierer. Francis writes the Creator Spotlight newsletter for Beehive. So, nice little bit of cross-platform, I don't know what, co-location. And he also does Tasteland, the podcast that I appeared on a couple of weeks ago with Sick Talks alum Daisy Alioto. Tasteland is a really great source for just a kind of real talk about the modern independent media ecosystem. So if you haven't already checked it out, please do. Francis is in the room now, so let me invite him to join us and we can get going. He, as you know, an employee of Beehive, can be forgiven for not understanding exactly how the Substack live video app works.
I was trying to join. The link was live, and then it wouldn't let me actually pop in until noon on the dot.
Yeah, I think the app is doing something a little weird today because normally it gives me a chance to like offline first and then click go live, and today it just went straight live. So who knows? Back end changes on the Substack side,
Far be it from me.
I mean, who are we to judge, Francis? Who are we to judge? The two of us, especially. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm coming to you from my kitchen today. I was flabbergasted that there was no option to do this on my computer with my usual podcasting setup. And I have to use my phone, but I'm taking advantage of that fact to make an impromptu standing desk with about 20 magazines and books at my kitchen
Got it.
counter.
Okay, so let's talk about the magazines and books. What are you? What's in the stack?
What business am I standing on? We've got at the top here. We've got Molly Baz's Cook This Book. We've got
Okay.
Classic German Cooking, another Molly Baz cookbook. We've got the latest Goo Goo Gaga ID magazine. Malcolm
Okay.
Harris's What's Left: 3 Paths Through the Planetary Crisis. And I'll stop for the most part. I've got a few copies of Digital Frontier, a short-lived magazine from 2024 to now. I've got all 5 issues there. And we are anchored by a copy of Silver Spoon, Great Italian Cookbook, very thick.
I mean, the classic, the OG, the GOAT. It's quite a stack. It's funny. But for whatever reason, loaded up on print media yesterday. I went to Word, the bookstore around the corner, looking for a couple of things which I was not able to find. But I got Hemingway's Old Man in the Sea and Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer as like weird promo, like cut rate books. I bought a book by Jason Green, who I thought was the Jason Green who is singer of Panthers, the Williamsburg band from the early aughts. It turns out to be a different Jason Green. I got that one. And then I went to Kinokuniya because friend of the show, David Marks, put a post up about how Popeye had released an all English Tokyo guide. So I went to Kinokuniya, and I got that. I got an issue of Second. I got the second issue of Popeye, and I bought Adrian Salinger's book, Teenagers in Their Bedrooms, which I've talked a bunch about in the newsletter recently, which is essentially photos of teenagers in both the Seattle area and in Syracuse, where I grew up in the late 80s into the early 90s. And many people, but a bunch of people that I went to high school or grew up skateboarding with are in the book, which is kind of an amazing thing to revisit.
That's awesome.
Anyway, and then I found a book by Amy Baradale, who's a former colleague of mine at Vice, called Trip, which is apparently about a mother who has passed away existing in the Bardo and trying to guide and influence her autistic son who is still alive. So I have no idea. Amy is a lovely woman, but she's a weird bird. And so I'm kind of excited to read that too.
I only know the word Bardo because last year a friend recommended me this book, Lincoln in the Bardo, which I've not read.
George Saunders.
Okay.
Have you not read?
I've not
Lincoln
read
in the Bardo. Lincoln in the Bardo is I found it. So George Saunders, one of our nation's foremost satirists, also a professor at Syracuse. Funny enough, but Lincoln in the Bardo is the least funny of his books to my mind, and it takes the longest to get going. But in the back half, it really moves and is really
Mm.
great. So just it's a bit of an investment, but you'll get into it and dig it. Well, okay, so all of that implies, Francis, that you're quite widely read.
I could be more widely read. I've been reading a lot recently. I'm
We
in
all
between.
could.
We all could. I'm between books right now. I just read a book that was sort of an in between books book, which was Carlo Bernowsgaard's Autumn, which is one of his four. It's like a series of four where they're all like
Sure.
2-page essays on like things like eyes or chimneys and such. But I think I just got the ID magazine I mentioned over the weekend. I also picked up Metrograph's second issue, so I'm kind of slowly reading that right now while I wait for. I think this will be my next book is Shadow Ticket, the new Pynchon. Yeah,
Very excited for that.
I was a bookish kid. Loved to read. I think in college, I kind of had a lapsed period in college where I wasn't reading on my own, and then I'm a big Nausgaard head, aren't we all? Because my struggle is what got me back into like reading for myself later in college.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. I am not a Nausgaard head. Not to say that have decided it. I've not to say that I have decided it's not for me. I've never delved into it. I've always had other things in the queue. All right. Well, let's talk about. But one of the reasons I went to Word yesterday was to put my name on a copy of Shadow Ticket, the new Thomas Pynchon novel,
wow, I love that.
which is coming out next week. And then you also mentioned that you were going to see One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson film this weekend. What is interesting about that, because it's an adaptation of Pynchon's Vineland, his novel from 1990, which is about, in some respects, cannabis farmers in Humboldt County, near where you've come from. I was going to say.
So I read Vineland. Or go. You were gonna say?
No, I was just gonna ask when you read Vineland, because it's been a while for me.
I read it 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
It's my first Pynchon I picked up on recommendation from a good friend of mine, also from there, who did his thesis on Pynchon in college. He was like, read this one. So I picked it up and I loved it, probably in some sort of navel gazing way, because here it's about the area I grew up in,
sure,
and about like people who were probably about the age my parents were in the context
sure
of the book. And there's like locations I know. I think that the final scene is in this beautiful, and Patrick's Point actually has a different name now. It's been original named. But yeah, so I think it was really fascinating to see this kind of angle. Like it felt almost, not non-fictional, but it taught me a lot about like the types of people I grew up around, and like these sort of like 60s hippie radicals, and what does and does not work, and what does and does not kind of, grow and rot of that culture.
Right.
So I loved it. I blazed through it. And it was just so fun and funny. And like, I've read that. I've read Bleeding Edge. I read earlier this year. And then I've read Inherent Vice. And then I got halfway through V like a year ago, and I stopped reading it. It was kind of boring. I think like, I don't know, the way I feel like Pynchon is always described as like a little complicated, a little like, it's hard to follow. I don't necessarily find that. Like maybe it's hard to follow if you like are really trying to like red string every single thing in your mind, which is one way to read it. But V, I thought like kind of falls apart, and I felt like it's like
I think it comes. If I recall, it comes back together. V comes back to in the end it comes back. It's a sort of Lincoln and the Bardo in that regard. Like it's the last third kind of pulls it back together, if I recall. It's funny though, because Pynchon, I feel like, and Jason Diamond alluded to this in a one of the stories in the newsletter this week that you pulled out, but he got into Pynchon through The Crying of Lot 49, which is by far his shortest book, and also the one that I read first, and the way that I got into it. Also Inherent Vice, also Bleeding Edge, also the short story collection from '84, also Vineland, Gravity's Rainbow, or etc. So anyway, welcome to our reading list. Thank you for tuning in, guys. This is me and Francis. Well, the thing that I liked about what I liked about Jason's whole discussion of it, though, was essentially like, these are books that you tackle as books, and the interrelation of those as films, particularly through the lens of One Battle After Another, is interesting.
Well, so I wrote down some quotes from his piece.
So this is why you're a real journalist, and I'm just a guy talking in my living room.
Am I a real journalist? I just podcast too often. But okay, let me read a couple things. So he says the reason I gelled so well with The Crying of Lot 49 when I was young was because the story is so tied to a conspiracy theory, and I've always found conspiracy theories fascinating as entertainment. He talks a little bit more about that, and he says Pynchon didn't introduce the idea of the conspiracy theory, but I do think he was one of the first people to truly understand the potential of them, how they can affect and sometimes infect our thinking, but most importantly, how to turn those ideas into art. And he goes on a little bit about how like these books, and Vineland in particular, maybe it was panned back then, but now it's more acclaimed because it like is more fit for this current moment and this moment of conspiracy theories and sort of reality becoming all conspiracy theory-ish. I mean, like after reading Vineland and then reading Bleeding Edge earlier this year, which takes place sort of between the dot-com crash and 9/11, and then a little bit after, and it's about like VC money and Mossad and how are these things connecting, and it's like it all feels a little too close to the real. I think it's like what's that Jordan Peterson thing? There are cathedrals everywhere for those with eyes to see. I feel like reading Pynchon kind of gives you those eyes to see way too many cathedrals everywhere.
Sure.
Where like I'll meet somebody and they'll so last night I was at this event for this launch of some startup Ohm.ai, and there was this panel and there was these two guys speaking. One, you've probably seen his Instagram stuff. He's like one of those tech bro sketch video guys, and he was up on a panel with this guy who's like 25. He's the CEO of Dub, which is the app that allows you to like make a stock portfolio that like just tracks what politicians are doing.
Right, sure.
And and like the comedian guy has an investment in Dub, and then he's also saying that this guy who's like 25, he dropped out of high school and then college, he's the number one customer at Carbone. Like, and it doesn't seem like a bit. Maybe it's not a bit, and it's just like something like that feels like the Pynchon-esque, where it's like I could have easily read that character in Bleeding Edge. So I don't know. It's like the way that he kind of his books make me want to like think there's more there than there is there when I'm meeting people like that, or maybe that the there is there. I don't know, but it just like it's this way of seeing the world that like has all these like red thread possibilities.
Yeah, no, for sure, and also the Crying of Lot 49, broadly speaking, is about a guy who works at Raytheon or some other sort of similar defense tech, Southern Californian defense tech company in the 60s, where you've got the flourishing of psychedelic culture, you've got a kind of a youthquake happening, you've got people, and I sort of count myself among them, who are getting older and institutional, but more institutional, but also are still like very hungry to stay connected to the kids. And so it's then like, all right, well, so what happens when you give the guy who is the, executive decision maker acid at the defense tech company?
You end up with Alex Karp, don't you?
I suppose. I mean, I feel like he was acid before he went defense tech, but yeah.
Palmer Luckey, I always forget, is like 30, 31. He's my age.
Yeah.
Freaks me out.
Why?
I don't know. I guess it makes me feel old.
Get used to the feeling, buddy. It only proliferates. It only proliferates. Well, in any case, I don't know. I like the fact that you highlighted that, and I'm eager to compare notes on Shadow Ticket next week, as well as on One Battle After Another, which I have to go see at some point.
Did you see
soon.
Eddington?
No, haven't seen that yet. Need to.
Obviously, that's like a corollary here. I think I'll just say quickly, like, if you haven't seen it, it's one of those movies where I got out of it, I was like, for my letterbox, maybe 3.5 stars, but then I just kept finding myself talking about it more and more, and it's maybe an imperfect, illustration of life with phones,
right,
and of life on the phone, but yeah, I think it's I'm not the first person to say it's a great double feature, but it's a great double feature, having not seen One Battle After Another.
It's funny. I just watched the other day. I watched the Parallax View on on Criterion, the
I know of it. I've never
Pacula.
seen it.
Yeah, so Warren Beatty, as a journalist who thinks he has found a conspiracy, goes to great lengths to discover and uncover the conspiracy. Um, and it's interesting because you talk about Pynchon as being the guy who to introduce this notion. That film was very clearly inspired by the proceedings from the Kennedy assassination, like and it draws some equally specious conclusions, if you're sort of similar, so inclined. But it's funny how these movements, recede and proliferate in uncertain times. And given the fact that we are in very uncertain times where, for instance, the government isn't operating, but everybody has to do 100 push-ups in order to prove their merit it becomes very salient.
Yeah.
Have you gotten, do you feel like you're at the physical fitness level of, the highest male standards?
Certainly not. I nor have I ever been. The peak of my fitness was probably when I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I biked everywhere in college. I
Okay.
never was a sports kid. I'm famously blind in one eye. I had a cataract when I was one, so they
Oh, I
removed the
didn't know that.
lens. Yeah,
That's not so
famously.
famous that I
I
was
just like to
aware of
say
it. Yeah.
famously. Yeah. So I think that was part of why I became a bookish kid, not a sportish kid. I played t-ball in kindergarten. It's the only sport I ever did. I worked on the farm growing up, so that's kind of physical activity. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm up to Hegseth's standards.
That's okay. We can all start. Listen, I've got an 8-minute workout, all hit style. You can do it in your living room.
I've been
It's
doing
really
hot
easy.
yoga though recently, joining in on my fiance. It's quite nice.
All right, very good, very
It's really
good.
difficult.
All right, so let's go back. This chat is ostensibly about like the stories that you reacted to from the work in progress sick list each week. But before we get into that, I want to understand a little bit more the farm to the farm to creator pipeline
Yeah.
and how that actually came to be. So as I said in the intro, prior to you getting on, like you are the editor of or the writer of the Creator Spotlight newsletter, which is widely circulated about the creator economy, interviews creative people each week who are in that world and emblematic of parts of it, as well as the host of Tasteland, which is the podcast with Daisy Alioto from Dirt. How did that all happen?
Yeah, I can. So, I mean, stop me if I'm going too long, but I think I can. I think I can do this pretty quickly. So,
Go for it.
like I said, bookish kid on the farm, parents, small farmers, 8 acres, like hippie from
Growing
the
what?
world of Vineland, flowers, produce,
Okay.
things at times. But mostly a lot of brassica. That's what does really well in Humboldt County, that's the family that includes Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, all those kind of
Oh, got
like
it. Okay, cool.
leathery
Sure.
greens. So yeah, but I never really wanted to be a farmer. I'm like a zillennial where we like had like a Windows 98 that we got probably when I was in kindergarten. I'd become obsessed with video games, etc. Still reading
Sure.
a lot. But I was always good at English class. I was always good at writing essays for school. And so by high school, I did journalism class. I was the opinions editor of the school newspaper. Wrote some truly awful pieces. And then I learned about rhetoric in that class. And so when I'm signing up for college, of course, I only want to go to a small liberal arts college. I go to Lewis and Clark in Portland, and they have a rhetoric and media studies major. So I decided that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to double major in that in English. But then my whole thing, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I was a child, I wanted to be an author. By then, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I want to be a journalist. But all I really know is I don't want to be a farmer, which means besides
Right.
not working the land, I don't want to work 7 days a week for not much money. And I quickly realized like, oh, that's what journalism would be too. So in college, it's just kind of media theory. Is it marketing? I don't really know. I don't really want to work in marketing anyways. By the time I get out of college, yeah.
Well, and sorry, I'm struck by that realization or cathartic sort of moment where you're like, working 7 days a week for not much money is what journalism is. I think there are many people in journalism who have never come to that conclusion. though they should have. And also, I just wonder whether there was a trigger for you, like whether you know what I mean, like there was a moment where you were
Well,
just like,
yeah, I don't
oh,
really know. Like, I
right,
mean, I was in college 2012 to 2016, so like I'm seeing all this like in anything I'm reading, I'm seeing stuff about like, the internet disrupting media and like Facebook pivot to video type of things. And I'm kind of
yeah,
realizing like, oh, that's not if I want like a more comfortable life, which ostensibly I did and do, this is not the way to go. Um, but then of course my first job after college was as a dishwasher and prep cook. So what do I know? I got out of college and I think I had a couple interviews lined up for marketing agencies, but one of them was like out in Tualatin, which is this suburb of Portland. And I live in this like, grimy house apartment right in the center of Southeast Portland. And I'm like, there's no way I'm commuting to the suburbs. And it really was kind of as simple and stupid as that. And so, I was kind of like, well, I will learn to cook and I'll do that for a couple of years. And then I'll come back to this once I get tired of that, which is what I did. Moved to New Orleans. I'm line cook there, start getting good enough at it where the restaurant I'm at, the chef is asking me like to help develop dishes. And by that point, burns, $12 an hour, cuts. It's time to move to New York and figure something out. And at that time,
get into the kitchen at the Black Rabbit. Just
absolutely
really,
not. I switched to being a barista, so it'd be much easier to move to New York. So my first job here, actually, I was at the Stumptown at the Ace Hotel on 29th and Broadway.
of course.
A classic spot, great spot, actually paid well, and it was great because there's nowhere to sit in the coffee shop, so people just flow into the hotel lobby. But at that point, I started to do like freelance writing, blog writing stuff, SEO gigs on Upwork that paid nothing. And then I worked that up into like some longer contract gigs. And then I was at Air for a few years where that was a content marketing role. I had no idea what a content marketing role was. All I knew was copywriting was kind of the thing I could do. And then I got to do a lot of different things there. And then I left and now I'm here at Beehive, which my pitch when I joined, which I guess is kind of the nail in how I get to here, is like I've been doing a series interviewing people at Air. I think I said this too in my interviews. Like I'm the type of person where at a party, the other person will leave the conversation, and I will probably have known something about this person already because I spent too much time on the internet and I've seen them on Instagram or wherever. And so I'll know some details about their life and I'll be kind of questioning them on it, and then eventually they will leave the conversation. And so I think that is any skill I have as a podcaster is related to that.
Making people leave conversations.
Knowing too much about them, preparing too much for any conversation, but as I did for this one. But but the last thing is like, I was studying in college, I was studying this kind of like new media, how are people using Instagram things. So like what I'm doing now is essentially precisely what I went to college for, which is some combination of marketing and journalism that's focused on new media.
That's kind of remarkable. It dovetails a little bit with the observation that I think you made in the Creator Spotlight this week, but also that came up in the Tasteland newsletter about Casey Lewis saying that Casey, who was here in the audience a minute ago, I don't know whether she's still listening or not, but Casey talked about how she thought that Gen A was going to be incredible marketers because they essentially,
so an 11-year-old, she's
was it Gen Z
for a project? No, it is a Gen A, but an 11-year-old said to her, I mean, this is what she said, paraphrasing it, that Gen Alpha will be the richest generation of all time because they're so good at marketing.
Okay, got it. Yes, thank you for correcting me there. What is kind of fascinating is the idea that you actually use your college degree in direct support of the thing that you're doing, because I find for most people that isn't the case. Like even if you study marketing in college, you might end up in a sort of a marketing adjacent discipline, but it's not usually marketing the thing that you studied in college. Anyway, go ahead.
I didn't know this would happen. When I was 23, I specifically remember my mother texting me or on the phone or something being like, when are you going to get a job in the field that you studied? And I remember saying, I don't know what the field I studied. I don't know what that job is.
I'm going to get a job as a rhetoricist.
No. That's the thing. I'll be a speechwriter. I don't know. I only really realized that like a few months ago that I am ostensibly now working in doing what I went to college to do.
Yeah, I mean, remarkable. Congratulations on your, little and having come from Lewis and Clark on your own personal little manifest destiny. Well done.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well
Thank
done.
you. Yeah. Back east, I took the Oregon Trail for
Oh my God. All right. Well, let's talk about some of these other things that you picked out from this week, because I thought your selection was pointed and erudite, if I may. My pleasure. My pleasure. Nothing. It is what a great podcast host does, right? Is flatters their subject into a sort of a stupor, and then you attack with the tough questions.
You flatter them enough to share the episode after the fact.
So here's what I thought was interesting. One of the pieces that you pointed out was submission from Iolanda Carvalho, staunch like guest contributor to SIC. She sent a piece that was in LBB Online about the consumer marketer mismatch in favorite advertising platforms. And what was really fascinating to me about this one was that there is no overlap between favorite platforms that consumers cite as their favorite advertising platforms and the places where marketers spend money, or the ones that they see as their favorites. Marketers, no surprise, say YouTube, Instagram, Google, Netflix, and Spotify. So streaming video, major market, or major proliferation, entertainment driven push rather than pull. For consumers, it was Amazon brands, Twitch, Amazon itself, and Prime Video, and then Snapchat and TikTok. So no overlap between the two, and also much more interactive, much more pull rather than push. And then the sort of short form social Snapchat and TikTok that are not really optimized for ads in the same way as the other ones. Makes some sense there. But so anyway, I thought that was really fascinating. What grabbed you about it?
Yeah.
As
so a few
the
things.
shepherd of creators.
So one thing, what the people they surveyed, right? Apparently 21,000 consumers across 30 markets and 1,000 senior marketers globally. I don't know the age groups that they were surveying, but for Twitch to be in there, I know that Twitch is probably, across many age groups, but I'm pretty sure it veers younger.
It's probably pretty young, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that Meta isn't in there, because to me, Meta is, like the advertising platform. It's so measurable. Maybe it's just because that's what we use. We use that to grow the newsletter too, and like in the software companies I've worked at, like that's always a big one for us. Facebook and Instagram.
But is that Meta writ large, like aka Instagram, WhatsApp, and Facebook?
Yeah.
or is it okay? Got it.
Because I don't think that was listed there, and I think for marketers,
Instagram is there as a favorite marketers platform. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because it gives you great data, it tracks really well, it finds audiences really well. But I think for audiences, maybe they're quite tired of like how dense the marketing is on a platform like Instagram. Though, like, so a couple of things I pulled out. One, marketers have become increasingly dependent on deterministic data from digital investments to provide reassurance that the ad spend is delivering. And then another one, marketers are marketers, preferring the platforms which deliver mass reach, proven track record, and necessary targeting to achieve what they need. And this is the second part, is what I really like. That's not to say TikTok won't feature on the plan. It's just not their preferred channel, likely because they've had to work bloody hard this year to show it as a viable channel, so they can increase investment for 2026, right? So like, I think somebody like Ari, my former boss, who put on the Air event we were both at last week, like that event, which they spent a ton of money on and was like really, really well put together, right? Like 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, I guess, when he joined and we were working together, we would have never been able to do something like that. Our entire budget for the year was probably like, I don't know, half of what that might have cost. I don't really know the exact numbers, but yeah, so I think somebody like him, he's kind of rare in that, like, he wants to work bloody hard, as this person said, to show that this is a viable channel so we can get more investment next year and get more investment next year. So I think like the good marketers are their favorite platforms for advertising are probably the good, and like what I think is interesting, I guess, for sure. Put a caveat there. They're more interested in these ones that are harder, that you do have to work harder to do, because like when you get success there, like that's where you kind of penetrate the culture more on a larger scale, right? This is kind of near the end, but this is one of my favorite quotes here. Her second lesson for brands is another one that's worth every marketer tattooing on the inside of their eyelids. Consumers prefer advertising that improves their experience and feels native to the platform. With that in
Can you
mind,
imagine? Can you imagine?
with that in mind, how can we create ads that are as entertaining, fun, less intrusive, and attention grabbing in the likes of Spotify, Netflix, YouTube, etc., as consumers find in their favorite channels? Which is what that's kind of my trade with Creator Spotlight, right? Where it's ostensibly a marketing channel for Beehive, but also not really. That's not the primary purpose.
Of course. I mean, look, the fact that even needs to be said is an indictment of the whole marketing business in a certain respect. But yeah, it's obviously true. That being the case, though, what's the last ad you saw that really enriched or enlivened your I don't know,
Yeah, I would
point of
say
view about
it
anything?
is an article I read this morning that you also sent in your in your round of links, which is the $400 million restaurant man, which is a profile on prolific restaurateur Stephen Starr.
Well, but hold on, that's not an ad. That's a big editorial story in the New York Times
But
profiling a guy.
when I thought of like what's the last ad I saw, that's the first thing I saw, because what does that do? It makes me want
That's
to go see his restaurants. To me, that's not an ad. It's not an ad, but it's not an ad.
Well, I mean, look, it gets to the assertion that I've made for a long time, which is that editorial and advertising can operate in total synchronicity and in conversation with one another if you just view the entire surface area as being a purpose neutral space where editorial can be advertising and advertising can be editorial in the way that it is in like skateboard magazines or in fashion magazines, like my two touchstones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I mentioned, I just got this Metrograph magazine. Daisy and I were talking a little bit about this on.
This is Metrograph, the theater downtown,
the movie theater. Yeah. So the only ad, ostensibly, is on the back. It's the back cover is an Hermes ad, but the entire thing really is an advertisement for going to Metrograph, right? Like,
right, sure.
Which is what this is. Consumers prefer advertising that improves their experience, feels native to the platform. I don't know. I guess what's the other best ad? The Air event we were at, right? Like, to me, and these are all things that like are this world building and like have entertainment value on their own merit and aren't like, and that's what makes them a good advertisement, is that they're entertaining and that the marketing bit comes second, that it's entertainment first.
Yeah. Well, it gives you a story to tell, it gives you a piece of collateral to hang on to. I just literally reached at arm's length. This is called The Intermission. It was made by Reigning Champ, the Vancouver-based knitwear and sportswear company. It's a story. Sorry, guys, I'm showing Francis on screen here, so if you're not watching the podcast, but this is like this. It's art and it's commentary and it's photography. This is by friend of the show, Issa Salabi, who is an OG menswear dude. He was the founder and creative director of Nom de Guerre. I don't know if you're a menswear guy, so I don't know if you know Nom de Guerre or not, but classic. Anyway, but it's a fantastic piece of collateral. It's nicely done. It's well executed. It is prepossessing on a coffee table, or in this case, my side table. But it also is newsprint. And it probably didn't cost very much. And that's the other thing that I really like about it as an effective bit of advertising. Oh, look at this. My first boss and mentor, Randy Irwin, happens to be in the house at the moment listening passively. And he just brought Randy. This like the Reigning Champ hat that they did for Ryder Cup, which of course I don't give a shit about at all except for the merch. But Randy's a big golfer. Anyway, so I guess that's it's always the question, right? Like, in theory, make it entertaining, make it advertising, or make it entertaining, make it enriching, make it transmissible, right? Something that you can then go to the bar after work and talk to somebody about and say, oh, I saw that, whatever it is. What I find, though, is that it is infrequent that people are able to name something, and almost never would they name something that, as you have done, is categorically not an ad, like the Stephen Starr story or like the on-air event, right? Which is a sort of experience. So I like this. I like the fact that you're thinking laterally about it, but I also think it demonstrates the fact that, like, in category, there is not often a lot of stuff to point to.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like the other end of the spectrum is if I'm scrolling Instagram and it's like I recently bought a new shower curtain, right? And like I like at first like Googled like what's the best shower curtain to buy, or so everyone does. Read the Wirecutter article.
That's a very dumb Google search, Francis. I got to tell you.
And there was a Wirecutter article. But then like I was like, okay, I'll buy one later. And then of course I get like on Instagram or wherever I was, like here's the one I looked at on Amazon, and like that, like to me, like that, I almost like don't even think of when I think of advertising, I'm thinking of the stuff that's thinking bigger and that is like entertaining. I'm not thinking of like the highly functional performance marketing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that was what struck me about Amazon, particularly Amazon being
Mhm.
so highly featured in consumer preference was, I mean, what it is essentially saying is consumers want advertising in the places where they buy stuff.
Yeah,
And
because
so,
then that's
like,
actually a service of like, oh,
right,
here's what you should buy, and you have all this data about me, you know what I should buy.
yeah, give it to me here so that I can avoid having it elsewhere, I think would be the
Yeah,
slightly underlying um thing there. It is intriguing. It's interesting because that then creates a little bit of a counterpoint to the idea that ads should be entertaining, because if what we really want is just the information in the places where we can transact with it, then trying to make it entertainment in places where we don't want it is, you know, possibly futile. Although something like the tiger can kind of live everywhere.
the
Have you seen the
Tiger.
tiger? We haven't seen the tiger?
What's the Tiger?
Oh, Francis.
The restaurant in Soho.
Carve out. No, it's not the restaurant. Carve out 33 minutes after this conversation, and I would encourage everybody who's watching to do the same thing. No, the tiger is the Spike Jonze and Helena Rain written and directed short film
2015.
for Gucci. No, 2025 for Gucci, just
Yeah.
came out last week, but it launched the Demna designed new collection for Gucci, and it is a tremendously effective piece of quote unquote branded content. Also, a really interesting kind of artistic statement, showcases a bunch of great performances from Demi Moore and Ed
Wow.
Harris and Edward Norton Jr. or Ed Norton. And maybe he doesn't have a junior. I don't remember. Anyway,
Edward Norton. No,
Edward
Junior.
Norton, that guy. Uh, but also is like a batshit crazy film about people on psychedelics. And
Yeah.
so, it does all of these different things, including showcasing the collection really well, that I just found very effective. So anyway, that's my favorite ad of late.
I'm looking at the landing page. It looks amazing. Stacked cast too, beyond just
Yeah, yeah.
advertising.
It's very cool. So anyway, spend 33 with that one at some point a little bit later. Okay, so Francis, in terms of the other stuff that jumped out at you, and it gets a little bit to that kind of optimization for platform culture that we talked about a second ago, but one was about this AIification of newsletters or of email rather, that was in Neiman Lab and jumps off from a conversation with Jason Kebler of 404 Media, former colleague of mine, who talked about how 404 needs now to authenticate every user with an email address, because if they don't, then AI optimized systems will essentially filter their hard work out of your feed into, some bardo of some purgatory nonsense place.
Francis and Ben in the Bardo today. Okay,
I
so
mean,
a couple things I wrote down from here that I like. So one,
yeah.
love 404, love what they're doing. I am an annual subscriber. But yeah, so I'll read some quote here. On January 26, 2024, 404 published a 2,800 word piece, a lot of numbers there. We need your email address about what was happening to its stories. From then on, the founders explained readers would need to enter their email addresses before reading stories. It completely changed their business almost literally overnight. He says they had around 3,000 paid subscribers by the end of March 2024, and today have more than 11,000. And then he says, too, I hate paywalls. I don't like logging into things, but it has worked for them. Another thing too, this wasn't in there, but Hellgate, some peers of theirs in this cooperative media business world, just released their annual report where they said that they had 9,000 paid subscribers, a 69% increase from their previous annual report. $70,000 monthly recurring revenue, up 66% from last year's 42,000, and some other things. But the point here too is like both these people they're on Ghost. They're using Outpost, which is this like Ghost plugin that does a lot for these businesses.
What is talk more about that, because I'm not familiar, and maybe
I'm probably not the right person to talk so much more about it. I'm only passingly familiar with it, but I believe 404 use it. Hellgate use it. Lex Roman has wrote really thoroughly on this. I recommend their work. They're much smarter about the monetization and business side of this than I am. But Ghost basically is like this open source competitor to a Beehive, a Substack, a Kit, right?
Yeah.
And for it being open source, I think there's a lot more customization that one has to do, and it's a little more complicated. But Outpost is this product that exists on top of it that like removes a lot of that complication and like brings it closer to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understanding. So they're using it to turbocharge their own sort of CRM and marketing. Okay.
Yeah. It's like a major plugin to the CRM. But
got it.
He also says something here, or no, but okay. What I'm also thinking of is, no, this is what I was looking for. This other quote. So when they added the email wall and paywall, there was a surge in subscriptions, but also a downside. Traffic plummeted. So 404 started experimenting with where readers encounter the wall in a piece. Articles are free and clear for a little while, and we add the wall deeper, Keebler said, which I think we're losing some signups, but probably catching a wider audience by using that strategy, which I'm also thinking of, again, when we were on air the other day, and Macy Gilliam asked this great question to Nicholas Thompson, CEO of The Atlantic. What do you do of the fact that so much free, low-quality propaganda type content, or so much of this low-quality propaganda content is free? The Atlantic, which is much more rigorous, has a paywall, and people can't access that. And what Thompson said was that like we are experimenting with much looser paywalls and like using AI tools and stuff with like that track your IP or whatever. But we're seeing how loose can we make the paywall while still making enough money to keep producing the content. So it was interesting to hear that on the scale of The Atlantic, and also see it discussed here on the much smaller scale of 404.
Well, and I mean, but the thing that's interesting about The Atlantic and Hellgate and 404 in that regard is that they are all growing, and they are all proliferating in their approach. Whether, in other words, like it emphasizes the fact that the problem has not been solved, but by attempting to solve it, there is a net upside to it, right? Rather than a like necessary R&D sinkhole. And then also that that the impulse, I think, from all of these publishers is to try to make the information free, while also taking into account that this kind of advertising supported way of monetizing journalism that has existed for 150 years or whatever, like, is effectively not working anymore. Yeah, I mean, if somebody showed up, if a creator showed up having read a few issues of Creator Spotlight and said to you, Francis, I want to figure out how best to monetize, do you point them to somebody like a Lex Roman, like you just did, or do you have a little thing that you offer them, or do you upsell them into Beehive services, or I don't know what? Do you just be like, no, sorry, bro, it's not possible.
What I'll
it's
do,
not possible.
I want to learn a little bit about what they're doing. What is their topic area? What's their niche? What is, like, are they a more like face forward creator type brand, or is it more of a like headless media brand? And then if they're more of a creator, right? I think the first question is like, why do people come to you? And like, if you're trying to do a subscription product, right? The two reasons people pay creators are, one, because there's information that they can't get otherwise, and so they're paying for access to this scarce information, or two, because they support the creator and they want to be a patron, right? Which that's kind of it's a bit of both, I think, with 404 and Hellgate. But those are like the two motivations, right? So if it doesn't seem like that is a good fit for them, well, then it's like, okay, well, what is the niche you're operating in? Like, are you collecting data on your audience? Start doing that now. Make that survey, the sign up survey. Let's say, back to the Ryder Cup, right? Like, maybe you're a golf focused creator, and you have like, you know who's on your list, and you've got, these specific golfers reading, or people at these specific golf brands. Like, who are the brands that would want to be connected with these people? And it's about I mean, which is very hard, and a lot of people, myself included, probably aren't the best at that. But it's like
Right.
either there's this relationship you have with your audience that they want to pay you, or there's this audience you have who you can provide advertisers access to them. Eli Weiss, who was at the on air thing, he is this like customer professional, like customer experience, right? And he told me he makes more money selling advertisements in his newsletter than he does from his full-time job as like a senior customer experience professional, because he's one of the only shops in town for like usually it's like customer experience software that want to reach these professionals, right? So that's B2B. In B2B, I think it's always much easier to like monetize really well through those kind of advertisements. Last thing I'll say is that harder to find can be harder to figure out and a little rarer, but I know a couple people who have monetized through grants. One is in Austria, where there's like a much friendlier grant system for these kind of like startup things. One is just over in New Jersey, Central Daisy, Umbreen Ali. Interviewed her about a year ago, and it was like she got it 2 years in a row. Maybe she got it this year too. I don't know. I haven't talked to her since then. But like $100,000 grant, that's part of this. Like I think it was almost $3 million total
Wow.
grant package for bringing journalism to underserved communities. So that's some of the ramble I might give a creator who asked me that question, and then obviously like try to help ask the questions and help them figure out like, well, what would make sense for you, what doesn't make sense for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I asked the question, of course, to delve a little bit into your expertise and what you've taken away from
My
all of these
monetization.
conversations, all the conversations you've had about the creator economy with all of these folks through Creator Spotlight, but also because it seems to me like, and it echoes Casey's assertion a little, or the 11-year-old who spoke to Casey's assertion a little bit, and it also reflects in a like an off air involvement of mine, which is acting as a mentor for the New Museum, New Ink program, right? Like artists who are trying to move to the next stage in their career, whatever that is. The big question many of them have for me is like, how do I monetize? What it seems like is that these skills, these ways of thinking and ways of framing, and also the potential sort of like sources of funding or sources of expertise are going to need to be held by people far across the economy, not just in the creator space or the artist
We're all
space or
entrepreneurs.
the yeah, exactly. Well, we are increasingly going to be called on to be all entrepreneurs until the
Wait. So a recommendation I would give here.
yeah, please.
He was at the Future Commerce thing that we were Visions that we were both at in the spring. Andrew Huang, right?
Yeah,
I interviewed him for Career Spotlight about a year and a half ago, because it was shortly after I'd started, and I wanted to find some good books about the creator economy. Has anybody written any good books about this? And his book was about to come out. It's called "Make Your Own Rules," some long subtitle. But what I really like about it is like he's in his early 40s, and he has never had a real job. He's been making money on music since he was like like around 2099 or whatever. He was a student, and I think he was 19 years old, and he started selling his songwriting services on eBay, and that was kind of the first way he made money. And ever since then, he's become a successful YouTuber. He's sold courses, he makes hardware, he's done like soundtrack commercials for major brands, etc.
sure.
But this book is so great because it's written, the implied audience is a musician, but really any like artistic type who wants to find a way to make money off of whatever this work is that they love and that they care so much about, but they're skeptical of entrepreneurship. They don't want to do that. And he provides like, it's a bit of memoir, but like really quite a practical book too, about like, here's how you do this and here's how you do so in a way that's palatable to you and doesn't really compromise your values.
Sure.
I recommend this book all the time. And I think probably the people you mentor would benefit from it too.
All right. Adding it to the other, the all of the other literature that we've already
The
covered.
reading list episode.
Indeed.
Reading
And,
list
okay.
is the Bardo. Sorry.
And the one other, speaking of reading, the one other thing that you highlighted from the list today was the in Eater, the life and death of the American foodie, as both a corollary to the Stephen Starr piece in the New York Times, and then also obviously as a sort of reflection yourself as someone who has spent some time around a gas flame, shall we say. Did you get into that at all prior to
I read
our
the beginning and I read
conversation?
the end. It's really long, and I wanted to talk about it, so I read the beginning and I read the end. And the gist of it, I get, is that like foodie culture was born in the fires of Anthony Bourdain and stuff 25 years ago, and now everyone's a
Born in the
foodie.
fires.
The born in the
Anthony
wok.
Bourdain.
It was touched by the wok. Hey, but that now it's everyone's a foodie. The word doesn't mean anything. We all know too much about Szechuan peppercorns, etc. We've all had
Yeah.
tripe. And I mean, it definitely reflects how I've been feeling recently, where for a long time I was somebody who read Eater every morning. I remember when I got to college and I was like 18, 17 actually, my friend Maya, who was also from my high school and was a year above me, she was like, yeah, Portland's great. Like I could eat at a new restaurant every day and I would literally never run out of new restaurants to try. And I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But now I'm kind of like, I don't need to try that new restaurant. Like maybe I could wait until 2 years later when they're not mobbed anymore. Maybe I
Yeah.
can just go to my favorite restaurant that's been around since like 1980 in the neighborhood, whatever. Which is like, so I'm just a reflection of this broader theme. But like, I think it's good to care a lot about food. I think food should be more expensive. You know what I mean? Not that I think it should
Yeah.
be more expensive, but like, especially like the type of like farmers market type stuff my parents do, or, you go to the meat hook or whatever, it's like that beef should probably be even more expensive than it is.
Sure.
And so I think it's good that everyone cares more about food and knows a little bit more about food. But I mean, I just wrote a piece about this for Dirt, about like the kind of the death of the small farm because it's hard to make a living doing it. And that's kind of how we started this conversation, right?
Yeah.
I don't know which plane I'm landing here, but it's good to care about food, but we could all do to care a little less.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's funny because I am somebody who I have never cared particularly about food in the way that we think of foodies. Like I am happy to go to the hot place because it's a great vibe, but I'm not there because I need to sample the tripe. I've
Yeah,
also never had tripe because I've been
pescatarian.
right. I mean, I've been over. I was started over lacto vegetarian when I was 14, so it just never made its way around to me. But in any case, I, I guess from my standpoint, I look at it from the other side, which is just like, oh my god, finally, all of you yo-yos are
Well,
going to
shut up about it.
will just calm down,
Yeah.
calm the fuck down. But they but they the flip side to that is that I think you're absolutely right that it's really like so much of our food system is taken for granted or is never considered, and the cost inputs into it and how they then arrive at the cost outputs are never really considered. And given that we in the Western world anyway pay a historically low price for food relative to our overall income and so on and so forth is just a fact that's worth considering. My way of being, let's call it more mindful about that, is a couple times a year in October, starting today, and in February, I take the month off from intoxicants and go vegan. Which is a total pain in my ass and which I don't enjoy particularly, but it does
Suffering is good for the body
to a
and the soul.
degree, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, this is what Pete Hegseth says. So, we're just like big ringing endorsement of his fucking dumb plan.
You heard it here
Anyway,
first.
exactly. The first pro Pete Hegseth podcast
Well, I think his
of
podcast
October. Yeah, that's probably true. Idiot. Anyway, but so I guess that's it. But I mean, as somebody who has worked in the food ecosystem your whole life, is that where this ultimately gets to? Like, I want people to be more conscious of it as a system, or like I really want people to be more involved with brassica because it's the most
No,
high
what brassica
value
is, but I just think that like
vegetable.
more so like I wish that there was a way to make a more dignified living in working in the food system, whether it's at a restaurant, whether it's on a farm, right? Like I remember when my parents, pretty small operation, like they have like 5 employees in peak season these days. But like when I first got my first job out of the food service industry and with like health insurance and stuff, I remember my mom saying like, I wish we could afford to give our employees health insurance, and we can't. And like they pay them as much as they can, right? But like there's just a limit to it, and like that's such a bummer. And it's the kind of thing that should probably be, in my opinion, more subsidized by the government. There's so many farm subsidies, and usually it's for big ag. There's a lot of good writing on that around right now in the wake of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which
Really cool bill, from what I understand.
super
Really awesome.
beautiful one
Yeah.
actually. But yeah, I mean the brassica thing that makes me think of like working at the farmers market, and Romanesco. You know what that is?
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, for anybody listening who doesn't know, it's the kind of fractal cauliflower broccoli thing, and we had some on the end where very eye catching, and I'm standing there all day. People keep coming up along and saying, "Oh, what is that?" Like, "Oh, that's so cool." I'm like, "Oh, it's Romanesco. It's actually quite similar to broccoli, cauliflower, a little more tastes like broccoli." And I'd be like, "Oh, that's so cool." And then they would take a picture and they would keep walking, and I'd be so pissed. I'm like, "Buy it! Like, buy one. It's not
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
expensive." So I don't know. I think I just have a bit of a chip on my shoulder. And this goes back to the whole thing about like, I didn't want to grow up and be a farmer. Like maybe, if you could make a better living doing that, would I have? I
Yeah.
also don't know. I'm probably too addicted to the computer. But yeah, that's really my thing is I just think that people who work in the food system should be better compensated. That's kind of what it comes down to.
Sure. No, I mean, agreed. I don't want to pay for it, but I agree with you. So that
Yeah. Well, I think our tax dollars should pay for
well, yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's the same as I was talking to somebody earlier this week about the BBC and the notion that at the very least there you have there's a place where a single national discourse can happen that everybody can reflect on, whereas here, like
our shared reality.
our right is exactly is so fragmented that we don't have it. Um, but yeah, we should same as we should fund a national broadcaster. We should better fund those kinds of food systems and not feed crops for livestock, but rather crops that feed people
Yeah.
more directly. Wow, I didn't anticipate this getting as political as it has. But I think
food is political, right?
I mean, it really is. It really is, Francis. That's exactly right. And also Pete Hegseth,
Mm-hmm.
political. Oh my
Very good.
God. I'm so excited to do my push-ups after this.
I can't wait for him to come on TikTok.
Can you imagine? Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, so speaking of that though, as we wind this down, because we're getting to the hour, where does Creator Spotlight go from here now? Is it about trying to dimensionalize the kinds of creators and create the sort of broadest like distribution, or is it about going like, okay, now I'm going after Mr. Beast because he's the biggest in the space? Like,
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, it'd be cool to talk to Mr. Beast, but I think I'm much more interested in talking to people who aren't as exposed. Mr. Beast has probably done, a million interviews. He already has a state media in Colin and Samir who do great work, and they interview him like once a year, and it's really good. It's like, what do I have to add to that conversation? What do I have to add to the conversation for him to want to be interviewed by me? No, I mean, this quarter I'm trying to do a little bit more ambitious reporting. Natalia Gonzalez, my assistant editor, she is working on a couple pieces that are going to take her many interviews and will be a little beefier when they come out. One in a few weeks. This kind of we're trialing what could be a series on creator cities. So starting with Chicago, and she's like talking to a bunch of people who work kind of in the creator ecosystem there, and then following, who are the people that they say she should talk to. Maybe that becomes sort of a map we're building out. She's also working on one that will take a little longer about state of creator monetization, trying to talk to people on different platforms, people who track that sort of thing. So going into next year, it's more of that. It's more of these same interviews. I want to try to do some interviews where it's like less about one specific person and more about a general issue. Maybe I'm talking to two people who don't work together, maybe don't even know each other, but there's like a shared conversation we can have about like, oh, here's what it's like transitioning from traditional media where you're on TV to like being an independent YouTuber, something like that, right? And I don't know, we'll see where it goes from there. I think maybe there's some kind of more formalized education component, some kind of like a cohort-based course. I'm skeptical of async courses, but I am not skeptical of bringing people together and having conversations. Yeah, so I think the podcast continues apace, a little more in-depth reporting. I want to get back to my more like off-the-cuff writing, which last Friday's was, and that was received pretty well. Need to do more of that.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, my big ambition is more ambitiously reported stories, maybe working with some freelance writers too. We don't have time.
All right. Well, if you're listening and you are a freelance writer, Francis is endlessly curious and accommodating, at least in my communications with him. So you should give him a shot with your ideas. All right. Well, everybody, this has been Sick Talks number 105 with Francis Zierer of the Creator Spotlight and the excellent Tasteland podcast. Go make sure you check both of those out. Francis, thanks for spending the time. This is cool.
Ben,
Looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Always a pleasure. Yes, I will. I'll see you in the mean streets of Greenpoint, Williamsburg. I'm sure.
I mean,
see you
the
at
meanest. See, I missed the geese show. I'm so bummed about that. Oh, whatever. All right, dude. Talk to you soon. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye.